Hey, Fanboy Nation.
This is your pal Daffy Duck, and you're watching.
We're watching
You're watching Fanboy.
Fanboy,
fanboy, etc.
Fanboy Nation.
God, I assume Tom.
Well, today, I have the pleasure of speaking with a man who needs no introduction. His name is Michael Schiavello. The man has 6 books under his belt. He is the voice of 1 championship currently, and I have known this man since, 2012, I believe. Michael Schiavello, how are you this afternoon?
Robert Samo, after an introduction like that, my friend, I feel even better. I am tremendous. It's great to see you. Thanks for having me on.
Well, my friend, I have to stammer through it because I'm so excited to talk to you. Last time we talked was Easter, and we were talking about patron saints and things going on. Unfortunately, shortly thereafter, things happened in France with the Notre Dame, but I'm happy that you're healthy, you're happy. You've lost a good 120 pounds. You know, I assume Dominic and Lewis are the ones keeping you running around like crazy.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah. You are on your 6th book, which I can't believe that you've done so much writing over the years. The first one was entitled Bouncer Real Life Stories, Offsides, The Wild Side of Soccer, Bodies of the Rich and Famous, Reflex Jack, Know Thyself, Using the Symbols of Freemasonry to Improve Your Life, and now Good Night Irene. This is a phenomenal book. It is too soon to do a life retrospective.
It is too soon. It's not an autobiography. It's a memoir. I'm only 45 years old. I can't write an autobiography yet. So Good Night Irene, which is here, I only just got my author's copies yesterday, and it's come up beautifully, is a memoir. It's all my adventures over the years. You're going to meet a lot of celebrities in this book. You're going to meet Hulk Hogan and Jean-Claude Van Damme and Steven Seagal and Jackie Chan and Dana White, Joe Rogan, Wazim Akram, Diego Maradona, Pelé. The list goes on. I'm going to take you behind the scenes. But more than that, I'm going to take you behind the scenes in my life as a once bullied fat kid who was picked on about his weight, who was told that he'd never amount to anything in the media world, especially in the broadcasting world, to, you know, now being broadcast to over 150 countries, being watched by more than 80 million people worldwide, who's had some amazing adventures, working in over 26 different countries. It's all here in the book, Robert, and I do hope this book inspires people, no matter what their situation is in life, that they too can overcome the naysayers, overcome the haters, the bullies, and the tormentors if they believe in themselves, if they have confidence, if they're driven by desire. So, you know, on top of the great celebrity stories you'll find, the juicy stuff in this book that I know you loved, I really hope that people find a social message, find an inspiring message that all of us, no matter what the obstacles are, we can get to that point we want to be in life, so long as you're willing to work for it.
Well, here's an excerpt from chapter 3, A Bum Bag Full of Handguns, since you mentioned Steven Seagal.
Oh, juicy chapter, juicy chapter.
Oh, it's a beautiful chapter. We're only going to do about 2 or 3 paragraphs. Yeah. So this is Seagal speaking to you. Let me tell you about Jean LaBelle. Seagal's voice pitches low. I feel like he might reach through the phone at any moment and punch me in the nose. He says he choked me out. He says he knocked out Bruce Lee. He knocked out Jim Brown. And do people believe this old guy? We worked together on set, stretching. That's it. We stretched a little together. Steven spits curse words like a drunken sailor with Tourette's. He launches similar tirades against Hollywood heavyweights Jean-Claude Van Damme and Michael Jai White. And Jai is one of the guys in the book that wrote a foreword for you.
He did. There were 2 forwards in the book, one by Michael Jai White, one by Bill Goldberg. As you said, chapter 3, it's very early in the book. I thought I'm going to kick this book off with a knockout blow and give you maybe the juiciest chapter of the whole book about Steven Seagal. I interviewed Steven in Phoenix, Scottsdale, Arizona, at the Phoenician Resort many years ago for the Voice Versus. It was the only time Steven Seagal had ever done an interview in his life that had been longer than 8 minutes. It was a 1-hour interview. It made television history. It was a huge rating success for AXS TV. It came out, and at the time, Steven loved the interview. And you'll go behind the scenes of what happened on that day, how he spent the entire day speaking to our makeup artist in a Rastafarian accent about the car that he turned up in that day, a car that is more secure than the Pope-mobile. This car was so like the Batmobile of Steven Seagal. He could be hermetically sealed inside this special car in case of a chemical weapon attack on Steven Seagal. It could even withstand a rocket-propelled grenade attack. I mean, crazy. Seagal rocks up on interview, and our sound engineer is putting his lapel microphone on, and he feels something under Steven's shirt. And he comes over to me and he goes, Michael, Steven's wearing something very peculiar under his shirt. I'm like, what is it? And he goes, well, it's 115 degrees outside and he's wearing a bulletproof vest. I'm like, what? And just these amazing stories, one after the other. We're about to start shooting, Robert, on the day. And my executive producer, Daryl Ewalt, an Emmy award-winning producer, walks into the shot to take Steven's bum bag that he's set down. And Steven sees Daryl get the bum bag. He's like, sir, be very, very careful. If you drop that bag, there are many dangerous things inside there that could kill us all. So Daryl walks with his bum bag like Indiana Jones handling the gold idol of the Havidos natives, right? This delicate care. And I called Daryl over and I'm like, Daryl, what's in the bum bag? And Daryl goes, guns. I'm like, guns, plural. Daryl's like, yeah, he's got like 4 or 5 handguns in there. But man, this is Steven Seagal. And he gave me this awesome interview, but the aftermath of the interview is something else, because one of the questions I asked him, Robert, was a question everyone wants to know. In your opinion, Steven, who is a legitimate Hollywood martial artist? If you were in a street fight, which Hollywood martial artist would you want by your side? He couldn't think of anyone. So I suggested Jean-Claude Van Damme, Michael Jai White, Chuck Norris, and Steven's response was, can I laugh in your face? Later on, several months later, when Steven bumped into Michael Jai White in a hotel in Thailand, they had a little face-to-face. And Michael said to Steven, why are you talking crap about me on Schiavello's interview? And Steven's like, oh, I didn't say that. Schiavello lied. He put words in my mouth. And Michael Jai backed me up. You know, Michael Jai and I are friends. And Michael Jai's like, Steven, how could anybody put words in your mouth? You're on TV saying these words. You know, so the whole aftermath, the whole story of this interview, you're right. It's a cracking chapter. And if you've ever wanted to go behind the scenes and into the mind of one of the truly most unique characters in Hollywood history, you don't want to miss this one chapter alone. It's crazy.
I remember when you did the interview with Seagal, and you have a very good poker face, but a couple of times it slips on camera. And in fairness to Seagal with his Pope Mobile, remember, he is the 14th incarnation of the Buddha, which he confessed in your interview and said prior to, do you want me to laugh in your face? I cannot speak ill of anyone.
This interview, Robert, continues to appear everywhere. Every now and then, I'll do a little search on YouTube. If I'm bored one night, the kids are in bed, the wife's in bed, I'll type Steven Seagal interview. It's all you need to type. And this interview and pieces of it will pop up from television talk shows in the UK, in the USA, across Asia, on people's podcasts, on radio interviews, on shows I've never even imagined it would pop up on. It has gone viral. I mean, the cumulative views on YouTube of this video of pieces of Steven Seagal talking, especially that piece where he says, can I laugh in your face, about these legit Hollywood martial artists, must have 20 or 30 million views cumulatively. It pops up everywhere. It continues to. Steven said at the time it was one of, if not the best interview he's ever done. I'm sad that he felt that way afterwards, only because people like Michael Jai White took issue with it and put it on him.
Well, Michael's no slouch. You know, the guy is a natural tough guy. He's got 6 or 7 black belts in various martial arts himself. He grew up in the streets. He's played the character Bronze Tiger live action on the Arrow series in the Arrowverse, and he will be doing so again in Batman: Soul of the Dragon. So the guy's no slouch when it comes to action or acting.
Robert, I know all the Hollywood tough guys, all the Hollywood martial artists. I've interviewed them. I've met them over the years. Your Jackie Chans, your Chuck Norrises, okay, your Van Dammes, all of them. And with my knowledge of the fight game, being a commentator for almost 26, 27 years, so I know what makes a fighter. I know what makes self-defense. I know what makes technique that works. Michael Jai White is, I'm telling you guys, is the most legitimate martial artist in Hollywood today. If I was ever in a self-defense situation and I wanted a Hollywood martial artist by my side, I'd call Michael Jai White in a heartbeat.
I believe you, man. The guy's been doing it for quite a while. And then when you find out how old Michael really is, you still can't believe it.
Amazing. He's amazing.
We're going to go back to the early days of Michael Schiavello, the fat kid in Melbourne. We got to eat the R, make it proper. Sat there, chubby Italian kid, which was a given because your mom's from Italy, your dad's from Italy. They force fed you everything. I think Ray Romano had that bit of, if you want a lot, you tell my mom you want a little. If you want a little, you tell her you don't want any more. And if you don't want any more, you just have to shoot her. So,
yep.
So it's pretty accurate in the Mediterranean world with that bit. You're growing up, you're the son, you're first generation Australian, son of immigrant parents. And here you are, your dream is to be a broadcaster. The general reaction, not only from your parents, who probably wanted you to be an engineer or something useful to society, but something of that sort. What happens when you start mentioning this to people in school, teachers, classmates, the people that didn't even like you?
Largely dismissed. Throughout in high school, years 11 and 12, so the 2 final years of high school, I was co-hosting a sports radio show on community radio, Southern FM, called Sunday Sports Show every Sunday. And one thing I was able to do as a 15, 16-year-old was to attract celebrity interviews with celebrity sports stars that the commercial stations couldn't get. I was interviewing, big name cricketers, big name tennis players of the day like Goran Ivanisevic or Stefan Edberg, Mary Jo Fernandez, Gabriela Sabatini. I was interviewing Diego Maradona. I was interviewing Pelé. I was bringing these big stars onto my little community radio show when you had commercial networks trying to pound down the doors and couldn't get these guys. Didn't mean anything to my schoolmates. I thought it may give me some validation in school. It may make me finally one of the cool kids, that they didn't just look at me as Schiavello the Marshmallow, Schiavello the Fatty, Schiavello the kid that can't complete the cross-country run, who falls over, sweating and greasy and everything. But it didn't have that effect. But I knew within myself, Robert, that I could do it. And I knew that beyond the exterior, what I had was a voice. And when you're on radio, Robert, nobody can see you. When I was on radio, I had such confidence. I was so keen. I was so eager. I had the confidence. My mojo was flowing. I didn't have that outside of the radio station because people could see me. And once they saw you, they're like, well, this kid's just some 15, 16-year-old geek with a little tape recorder make-believing that he wants to be an actual reporter. But I wasn't make-believing. I was trying to make a resume. I was trying to make my career start very early and give it a push. So despite the naysayers, I kept pushing. I kept believing in myself. I kept believing in my voice. And I think a big thing was, Robert, that I didn't want to become a broadcaster. I desired to become a broadcaster. I want to say there's a big difference between want and desire. And I talk about it in the book in a chapter about Joe Rogan, actually. In that when you want something, let's give an example. Right now, I want a piece of cake. Right now, I want a glass of milk. In 10 minutes' time, I'm going to want a sandwich and a glass of Coke. Later on this afternoon, I want a kebab and a glass of beer. Want changes. Every 10 minutes, 20 minutes, it changes. But when you desire something, that's deep. That's in your soul. That's in your spirit. That's in your makeup. That's in your DNA. It's not fleeting like want. When you desire something, you'll go all out to get it. Because until you get it, until you make it work, that desire is never satisfied. The thirst for that desire is never quenched. I had that thirst. After I did my internship, my work experience as a 15-year-old at Triple M Radio in year 10 in 1990, all I wanted to do was do media, be a broadcaster. That's where the light bulb switched on. And I did everything I could, despite people saying you don't have the proper voice, you're not blonde-haired, blue-eyed, you don't have an Anglo-Saxon name, you don't fit the mold, Michael. for commercial radio, let alone for commercial TV. You don't fit it. But I made it. I did it, both on radio and also on television. And I really hope that message comes through. And it's interesting when you read the back of the book, we put some testimonials from various celebrities on there. Now, there's a guy in Australia called Santo Cilauro. Santo is part of the team of Working Dog, who did some of the greatest Australian movies of all time. One called The Castle, which you'll know of, which was maybe the greatest Aussie film ever made. Well, Santo was working at Triple M when I did my work experience there in 1990. And he actually wrote on the back of the book, I'll read this to you because it's what I'm talking about. Santo wrote, when I first met Michael as a dumpy, over-enthusiastic teenager, I told him, kid, if you love what you do and work hard enough, you can achieve anything in life. Of course, I didn't mean it. Now, 30 years on, I'm so glad he took my disingenuous words to heart, because that is exactly how Michael became one of the great international voices. Love and hard work will get you everywhere. Santo was another one. I was in his face. He thought, yeah, the kid's got enthusiasm, but he's not going to cut it. But I did. So I hope those lessons are in the book for other young people, that no matter what you think is, getting you down, or what issues, body issues, self-confidence issues are keeping you down, you can break free from those shackles. You can get rid of them. You can climb out of that pit and become who you want to be. You've just got to work hard for it, Robert, and you've got to have the desire.
Well, you had the desire, you had the work ethic, you busted your butt to get there. I remember when I first met you back in 2012. I believe it was an RFA fight, or it was Line Fight Muay Thai. It was an amazing show. Scott Kent still puts on some great shows, but it's not the same when you and Frank Trigg were working the shows. You and Pat Miletich were doing it. There's something to be said about working with a professional fighter that had that. But more importantly, and this would be my assumption, so please correct me on this, that the highlight of you finally sticking it to everyone and making it was the 2008 Olympics.
Definitely. I think Olympic Games for any athlete or anyone in the sports industry is the pinnacle. That's the Everest. That's what we all aspire towards. It's the biggest event on the planet. So in 2008, I was hired by TVNZ to commentate all the boxing at the Beijing Games for the ABU, the Asian Broadcasting Union. So we were put out to 146 countries, I think it was. Crazy experience, 11 days, 240 fights on my own commentating at the Workers' Gymnasium in Beijing. I got to call Vasyl Lomachenko to a gold medal. I got to call Deontay Wilder to a medal. I got to call some amazing boxers who have gone on to the professional ranks to dominate. But that experience taught me so much, and it was the hardest experience I've ever done in my life, but also the most rewarding, because I can turn around now and say I'm an Olympian. Not an athlete, sure, but I'm one of the very select few broadcasters who every 4 years get the call up to this event. And to have commercial networks have the faith in me, to say of this event that we are investing so many millions of dollars in, we'll use Michael Schiavello, this guy from Australia, with no formal qualification, no formal training. I have no formal media training, guys. I did high school and that was it. I went to college. I flunked out after 2 months. I dropped out. I hated it. I taught myself everything I know in writing, in broadcasting. So for someone like the ABU, for TVNZ to turn around and go, we want you to helm our Beijing Olympic Games commentary, that was a huge honor. And you're right. And I never look at it, with all the stories you'll read in the book, Robert, I never look at any of these accomplishments as an FU to anybody, not an up yours. To me, it's just like validation to myself and to those who believed in me, like my parents did, certain close friends did, that I did it. I achieved it. I made it happen. But more so for my own kids as well, that I can show my two sons when they grow up, hey, it's here, guys. That's why the book is dedicated to you. I mentioned it in the end of the book. This is for you. This is to show you what Daddy did and how he did it. So whenever you get down in life or you think, I can't do it, read Dad's book. Dad did it. And I was just a normal, very average kid, Robert. you know, with no great advantages. Nothing was ever handed me on a silver platter. I had very supportive parents. My mother, she would drive me around to football games, to kickboxing matches, to soccer games, to the radio station every Sunday morning. She'd drive me around on weekends, you know, because she believed I had the right passion, that it's something that I was wanting to pursue, and I had that desire. So she believed in me. And this is proof of her belief and the belief that people had. So, you know, once again, I hope people can take that lesson away from the book, that you've just got to want it badly enough. And to get to the Olympics, whether I do another Olympic Games again or not, was the highlight.
Well, it's an amazing achievement. Not very many people get to do it as well. We're going to set a rumor straight. Rumor. And I'm just picking you on this. Your wife, I truly believe her real name is Helene Papadopoulos, and you made her change her name to Irene, so that way you can scream it out every fight, and as a reason to sit there and go, you know what, I created this catchphrase, now you have to live with it.
You're making my microphone fall out. That's a good one. Okay, so let me put the rumor to rest once and for all. Yes, the book is called Good Night Irene. Yes, my wife's name is Irene. That is not where Good Night Irene comes from. Here's the story. When I first commentated anything, Robert, it was in 1991. I was 16 years old. It was the track and field championships of the inter-schools here in Melbourne, Victoria. And I was commentating a 1,500 meter race or whatever it was. And for some reason, when the runners crossed over the finish line, I blurted out, "Good night, Irene." I didn't know at the time where it came from. Thinking back, where it came from was, I was always a pro wrestling fan. I'm still a huge pro wrestling fan. And a guy that I grew up loving to listen to was Gorilla Monsoon, who remains my favorite commentator of all time, my commentary hero. Gorilla Monsoon used to commentate one of my favorite wrestlers, Adorable Adrian Adonis. Adorable Adrian had a sleeper hold finish that was named Good Night Irene. And I'd once heard Gorilla Monsoon say Good Night Irene as the sleeper hold of Adorable Adrian. It stuck in my subconscious. So when I commentated this track and field event, I blurted out Good Night Irene. When I started commentating fight events as a 19-year-old in 1994, I blurted out Good Night Irene when someone got knocked out. It became my catch cry. Robert, they always say the universe brings you what you ask for. I was screaming the name Irene for more than 20 years on television. Somehow the universe thought to bring me, of all the names, of all the women in the world, a girl named Irene who I ended up marrying. It's freaky. It's weird. I know. When I started dating Irene, she went on YouTube and looked me up, you know, did her due diligence to this guy she was dating. And she heard this guy screaming, "Good night, Irene, good night, Irene, good night, Irene." And she freaked. She thought, I've been going out with this guy a couple of times. He's screaming my name on TV. I'm going to dump him. This is a weirdo. Until I had to tell this story to her, go, no. Go back 20 years ago to the old videos. I was screaming Irene back then. It's got nothing to do with you. And just for the record, Robert, I've never once said good night, Irene, to my wife, because she said at the start of our relationship, "Michael, if you ever say good night, Irene, to me, I will kick you in the private parts." I value my private parts, Robert. She's got a hell of a kick. I've never once said good night, Irene, to my wife.
Then how do you wish her a good night?
"Good night, honey. Sweet dreams." Give her a kiss. Off to bed. Private parts are safe.
Well, it's a fantastic story, but there has to be that moment where you're sitting there, because you are also the only person I know ever to have met his wife at a bar or a nightclub and made it work. So we're going.
Oh, right. Isn't that always the old thing, right? It'll never work out with a girl you meet at a club. We met at a club. We were introduced by a mutual friend, and we hit it off straight away. The beauty of it was, and I actually talk about the development of the relationship in the book. The beauty was that Irene and I met one night, and I added her on Facebook, of all things. I didn't get her number. I added her on Facebook. I was going away the next day on the road for 3 weeks, doing shows in Nebraska, doing shows in Colorado, a show in Seoul for K1, and a show for Dream, I think, in Japan. And during that 3-week period, we were writing each other on Messenger every day, So we became almost pen pals, and we got to break down our backgrounds and our backstories and talk about our interests and our likes and dislikes. So when I finally came back and we went out on our first date, all that stuff that may be a little uncomfortable to talk about in a first date, that ice-breaking stuff, it was already gone. It was like we were on date number 10 or 11. So that was the beauty of that relationship. And I say in the book that I list in the book, and I wasn't afraid to discuss how being the fat kid didn't put me in a good spot with girls. Girls always wanted to put me in the friend zone, Robert. Always friend zoned. I had my crushes. I had girls I liked. And girls would like to come to the fights with me, like to sit next to the commentator when the TV lights and the cameras are on me and there's 20,000 people screaming around you and knowing it's on live TV. And the adrenaline and I've seen these fighters that are, sweaty, glistening, muscular bodies fighting right in front of their face. It's like crack for girls, taking them into a live fight, sending them ringside. I'd come in with a girl on my arm, but that was it. I was always friend zoned, So I talk about this in the book and how disheartening it was for me and how emotional it was for me. And when I met my wife, Irene, it was so natural. It was so easy. There were no games. There was no second guessing what to say. What do you put in a text message? Do I call her now? Do I wait a day? Do I wait 2 days? Will I sound too eager? There was none of that. It was so easy and simple. And I say to everyone now, when I have friends who are girls or friends who are guys saying, what do I do about this guy or this girl? And do I call them? Do I text them? I say, listen, if it's the right one, you won't need to ask these questions. It will just be so natural. And if a guy or a girl wants to go out with you, trust me, they will move mountains to go out with you. If a guy or a girl ever says, oh, I'm too busy, I've got something on, I've got work in the morning, no, because you will move mountains. I moved mountains to want to go out with Irene, and she moved mountains to want to go out with me. She took a day off work before we went out on our first date that night, So you do things if you really are interested in that person.
This reminds me of when I was in Jerusalem a couple of years ago. For years, I could never vocalize how, because everyone asked, oh, you're such a nice guy, whatever, how come you're not married, this. And I could never vocalize, oh, that wasn't the right person, this didn't work out, this. And then I was standing in St. Mark's Syriac Orthodox Church, and the church is built above the upper room where the Last Supper and Pentecost and Jesus washing the feet of the disciples took place. And the nun asked me, so I'm standing in the nave of the church facing the altar. To the right is one of the 3 icons that St. Luke, the gospel writer, wrote. And again, standing in the heart of the nave above the upper room, and it just came out. I said, sister, if I look into her eyes and I don't see God in her soul, she's not for me.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful way of putting it. And it's very true, Robert. When you know, you know. And how do you know? Divinely inspired. I think God puts it in your heart that that's the person that God put on the planet for you, and you know it. And it's easy.
And it seems that you guys are having a great time. Eventually, when your wife was pregnant with Lewis, I believe, or just before the second trimester, you guys decided to move back to Australia. I assume you met Irene in Australia.
Correct.
That transition from Australia to the United States, people always say, the American dream and going to America, and it's a big deal, which it was a big deal, obviously, because you got to work for HDNet TV, and then eventually it became AXS TV. You covered Dream, and then Invicta and Titan and all these other promotions throughout the years over there. What was it like not only coming to America for you, but also being able to now go back to Australia? Because they always say you can't go home, but you clearly were able to.
Going to America presented a lot of challenges, but also it relieved a major problem. I'd been flying, I'd signed with AXS TV, HDNet in 2009 when Mark Cuban signed me up. And I was flying back and forth between Australia and the USA every 10 days. And usually I'd go Melbourne to LA, which was a 16-hour flight, change through customs, hop on a domestic flight, and then go to Midwest and do a show in the Midwest or on the East Coast. So add another 5, 6, 7, 8 hours flying between airports to get to my destination. And then I'd pack up and come back home to Australia. And it was taking a psychological and a physical toll on me. And I said to Irene at the time, I said, I can't do it anymore. It's killing me. I love the job. It's a dream come true to make it on American television, but I can't do it. And so AXS offered to get me based in America and said, choose a city. Where do you want to live? And I said, Las Vegas, because A, it's the fight capital, and B, I had a great friend there in Ray Sefo, so I knew someone there. So we settled in Las Vegas. It was a culture challenge because there's a lot of cultural differences between Australia and the US. And a city like Vegas presents a lot of challenges, but we overcame, we adapted, and ended up having the time of our lives in the US. And our first son was born there in the USA. And we had a great time, and we made fantastic friends in Vegas. And I got to live the American dream of being an Australian who went to the USA and did it. And again, a lot of people said I couldn't. A lot of people said the Australian accent won't work on American TV. It won't last on American TV. They don't like Australian accents. It just, why would they get you to commentate when there's probably 100 Americans they could get to do the same job that, sound like one of their own sports commentators? But that was the thing. I didn't sound like one of their own sports commentators. I sounded like me. That's why Mark Cuban hired me. As the story goes, Mark Cuban was watching a K1 broadcast I was doing in 2008 at 4 o'clock in the morning, beamed into his home in Dallas. And he heard me make a comment about Semi Schultz, I think it was. I said Semi Schultz had less personality than a head of lettuce, something like that.
Yep.
So at 9 o'clock in the morning, Cuban rings Andrew Simon, who was the CEO of HDNet Fights, and he goes, sign this Aussie. He made me laugh my ass off. Sign him up. We need him. We need his personality. I remember traveling to Jamaica to do a show in Montego Bay, and I was traveling through LAX at the time, and I switched my phone on, and there was an email from Andrew Simon saying, Michael, my name's Andrew from AXS TV. I want to make you an offer that could change your life. Would you like to work for us? Be our mixed martial arts commentator. It could make you, I remember his word, it could make you a household name in the USA. It was one of those moments in my life where I didn't need to think about it. That was what I wanted to achieve. Because like I mentioned before, the Olympic Games is a pinnacle. That was in 2008. But for a non-American to get onto American TV, the biggest market in the world, and to be competitive and to make your mark in that market, to make a name for yourself in that market is an achievement. I did that. I achieved that. And off that was able to, springboard my career as it continues now with one championship. But I owe a lot to America. It still is the land of opportunity. And again, I'm proof of that. And when people forget that and they say, well, it's no longer like it was back in the 80s, the 90s, where you could make your dream realized, I don't believe it for a second. I'm an Aussie telling you that America is still the land of opportunity. I achieved the American dream from the outside. So, I owe a lot to America. I love America. And, I still want people in America to know that it's a land where you can make your dream come true. Again, Robert, it just comes down to how badly do you desire it, not want to desire it. Because a lot of people expect things to be handed to them on a silver platter. And when they don't get it given to them easily, they're like, oh, that's BS. It wasn't the land of dreams. It wasn't the place of opportunity. But it is. You just got to work for it. All those immigrants that built America, like the immigrants that built Australia, that built so many countries around the world, do you think their life, do you think their generations, 2, 3, 4 generations ahead, like myself and like you, do you think we have the life we have, the roofs over our head, the food on our table, the way we grew up? Do you think we had any of that because they were handed it on a silver platter? No. They worked their fingers to the bone. Why? Because they had a desire to provide for their family, to provide for their family's family, to provide for generations ahead, to make it happen in a foreign country. I had that desire in America, and I worked my fingers to the bones to become the voice on American television. So again, I hope that message comes through in the book, that it's all about drive, determination, desire, and self-confidence to go out there and get it and bloody work for it. Work for it.
My friend, you did do that, but I will also tell you this. No American in the history of the 240 plus years of this country could have called a Mayanus fight with a straight face.
Oh man, this is oh man, you know what? It's funny. Again, every now and then I'll do a search on Google, and the search will be Danny, my anus, or my anus is bleeding. That's all you need to Google search. That's all I'm saying. This fight will come up. I forget the year. Was it 2015?
By the way, before you tell this story, I have to tell you, I've shown the highlight reel to at least 40 people because people didn't believe me in that could have been done. And here is proof. There is that, well, I think like a 3-minute highlight reel of you calling 2 of his matches. So please go ahead.
So, all right, I'll tell you the story. A lot of people want to know the story behind Danny Manus and his fight against Zach Chavez, then against Boston Salmon. First up, we met Danny doing pre-fighter interviews the day before Pat Miletich and I. Interviewed him, talked to him. We'd finished our interviews and Danny went off. Pat turned to me and said, "This could be a problem with your accent." I'm like, "Why?" He goes, "Just say his name again." I go, "Danny Manus." Pat goes, "Say it again, Danny Manus." Pat goes, "It's not exactly how I say it. I can't do the American accent. Manus." I'm like, "It doesn't come out of my mouth that way, Pat. It comes out Manus, Mainus." He goes, "That could be a problem." So we knew. People asked, did Schiavello know? Did he know? Was he doing it deliberately? We knew we could have some fun with Danny's name. But the key to doing it on the night was not to make it seem like we knew what we were doing, because otherwise the comedy effect was spoiled. Okay? So as I start the fight, it sounds like Manus, but the more it goes on, Manus becomes my anus. And then, Robert, everything that could happen in a fight to make it comedic happened. Manus delivers, Zach Chavez, does one of these punches. Okay? So it's a double fist to Manus. When else does that happen in a fight? One of these. Never. But it's a double fist to Manus.
Right.
Manus started bleeding badly, so blood all over Manus. Manus is bleeding all over the canvas. Okay? All this stuff was happening to Manus. Manus was flattened like a pancake. Manus is in trouble. Manus can't breathe. All these things happened that you couldn't script. Meanwhile, we're commentating, okay, and I'm keeping the straight face because that's how you can play the comedic element. I turn to Pat, and Pat is off his chair on the floor, rolling around laughing. He's taken the headphones off. He is literally on the floor laughing. I'm trying not to laugh, so I turn next to my floor manager. Turn to her, it's a woman. She's got her headphones off, and she is laughing. She's bent over. I can't look at her. I'm going to start laughing. I think, all right, there's going to be one redeeming face in all of this. There'll be one stoic face. It's going to be Andrew Simon, the CEO of the network, sitting behind me. So I turn around, still commentating, mind you, just to look at Andrew to reassure myself, say, don't laugh. Andrew is off his seat, bent over, laughing. I've got nowhere to look. I'm trying to keep it in. This same thing happens over those same 2 fights. But this clip of Danny Manus goes viral. Someone uploads it on YouTube, and the next day, it's played on Howard Stern's show. It's played on Jimmy Fallon's late night show. I'm interviewed on radio stations from Boston to San Francisco. The biggest commercial station back in Australia calls me for an interview. It's hit Australia. It's hit the UK. It goes everywhere. Even online today, there are always TV shows and web shows popping up where they challenge people not to laugh on various video clips and TV shows and stuff and stand-up routines. That one is always in there, and people always laugh. It keeps popping up. So, yes, it was deliberate. Yes, somehow I kept a straight face, but that's all part of the art of commentary. Sometimes, when you know you can do it, you know it's going to be gold, you do it. But the art is to make it work like no one suspects anything. That's the real art form of it.
Well, there was that, and there was Big Swingin' Johnson at one point, which we were disappointed that he didn't fight for LFA on your last fight here in the United States.
Yeah, there was Big Swingin' Johnson as well. And again, another clip that went viral, and a lot of online websites picked it up. We had a lot of fun over the years, Pat and I. Our thing was, if we're having fun, the viewer's going to have fun. It's always been my motto. If you're enjoying yourself, the viewer, the listener is going to enjoy themselves. Sometimes in regional fights, the fights can be boring. It's between this guy and this guy from 2 neighboring towns that nobody knows about. And it's a dead boring fight. And you can't make mutton seem like prime lamb. You just can't sometimes. People aren't going to buy it. What you can do, though, if you find a comedic element, is to ham it up a little bit. So long as there's a certain line you don't cross. Okay. With a Danny Maynard, for example, I hammed it up to the hilt, but I didn't cross the line to make it sound crass. There was never like, oh, Schiavello's deliberately doing this to make it sound crass. There was always in your head, does he know he's saying this? Does he know his accent sounds like this? And that was the beauty of it. Okay. When we commentated, Big Swinging Johnson was another one. You know, a guy in XFC back in the day was called Farkhad Sharapov. That was his name, Farkhad Sharapov. I remember sitting down with him for our pre-fight interview, Frank Trigg and I, and I'd said to Trigg, the guy's name's Farkhad. Frank goes, that can't be how you pronounce it. I go, I think it is. Frank called him over and goes, dude, how do we say your name? He goes, Farkhad Sharapov. Just say it one more time. Farkhad Sharapov. Okay. So it was Farkhad Sharapov. You know, you take a comedic element, you put it in there, but you never let people know that you're trying to ram it down their throats. It's got to be subtle.
Well, it was one of those things that was there. I want to know what Danny Maynard's reaction to it was when he got home and watched the fight.
Yeah, this is a funny thing. Danny's reaction was great. He was a great sport. Danny Maynard became overnight the most famous unknown mixed martial artist on the planet. Probably the most famous mixed martial arts name outside of the UFC. But for one night, and while the buzz lasted several weeks, he was the most famous fighter on the planet just because that clip went everywhere. There was nobody who did not know Maynard was bleeding, this Danny Maynard guy who suddenly found overnight fame. Boston Salmon was the same. But the thing about Boston was, I don't think I've told this story before his fight against Danny, I mean, he'd already watched the one against Danny and Chavez, the first one. He came up to me, he said, Schiavello, can I ask you something? I go, yeah. He goes, can you turn it up for the Danny Maynard in my fight? I want to see if it goes viral again. I go, dude, I'd already planned to. I mean, it worked once. I'm not going to do the same stuff, but we'll see what happens in the fight. I go, but listen, if you knock him out quickly, nothing I could do for you, mate. If the fight goes on, we can have some fun with it. I don't know if that's why Boston Salmon decided that the fight went as long as it did. Maybe he wanted to draw out the comedic element. But, Boston was a good sport. He asked me, will you ham it up? And I said, yes, I will. And again, it was gold because I guess, and I did not do this purposely at the time, Robert. I only saw the comments on YouTube afterwards. But I guess with my Australian accent, Boston Salmon, when I say it fast, sounded like semen. So when I said Boston Salmon trying to get inside my anus, it sounded like semen trying to get inside my anus. I didn't realize that. I honestly didn't. It's only on review seeing the comments from Americans saying, is this guy calling him semen? Semen? He's saying semen. It's like, no, salmon. But I can sort of get why you'd think it'd sound that way, but that was not my intent.
Well,
that would be again, case in point, that would be deliberately too crass to have done that. It would have been too in your face. So yeah, that was never even factored into my mind.
Well, you've done some amazing fights. I mean, over the years, K1 has been amazing. You've mentioned the UFC. You've called fights for Invicta. You've called fights all over the world. K1 especially, Dream. Those were some amazing shows, especially the New Year spectaculars. I mean, we sat there 13 hours of just continuous MMA, professional wrestling, Thai boxing, everything else that was going on. And you mentioned the UFC being the granddaddy of them all. You know Dana White. Dana's an interesting character. The guy's got big personality. At least he's upfront with who he is, and I respect him for it. But you are now with One Championship, formerly known as One FC. You work with Rich Franklin. You work with my celebrity crush, and I make it no bones about it, Misha Tate. And you have some amazing talent over there in Singapore and Southeast Asia. When you got the call, not only after deciding to go back home to Australia, but to work for One, how important was that to be as close as possible to the continent?
It was very important. You know, Irene and I had decided we wanted to head back to Australia. She was pregnant with our second child. My contract at AXS was coming up for a renewal period, but we wanted to go back home. And so, as the story is, One Championship, Bo Vongsakun, who was the former EP of Inside MMA on AXS TV, had gone to work for One Championship. He's the EP. He's the president of production at One Championship. He's in charge of all the TV. He'd rung me several times and said, Michael, can you come to Myanmar? Michael, can you come to Kuala Lumpur? Michael, can you come to Bangkok and commentate a one show, next weekend? We need someone. I'm like, Bo, I'm busy here in America. I'm contracted with AXS TV. I can't just come over to Asia and do a show, And he'd rung me in March of that year and he said, can you come and do a show in KL or wherever? And I said, no. I go, listen though. I go, I'm at a point where I want to go back to Australia. My contract with AXS is coming out to renewal. Hey, make me an offer. If you're serious, make me an offer for one championship to be your commentator. Okay. He went, he spoke to Chatri Sitchatong. Chatri had heard me commentate K1 and Dream. Chatri is for those that don't know, Chatri Sitchatong is the CEO, chairman, founder of One Championship, a martial artist himself, a lifelong martial artist, Harvard graduate, Muay Thai, former Muay Thai fighter. He'd heard me commentate K1. I was the crazy, over-the-top, but knowledgeable commentator that he came to love. So when Bo said I was available, Chatri was like, yes, let's look at signing Schiavello. Let's make him an offer. One made me an offer. I liked the offer. It got me home to Australia. I've loved my time with One Championship. They are a huge production. The size of the production alone, Robert, is like nothing I've seen before. It is massive. At every show we might have about 120 people just on the floor in the arena working it. Not to mention the others scattered around in the studios and the satellites and all that stuff. It's a massive operation. They're tremendous. They are working on just, everything down to a fine detail, being as perfect as possible. And they're always thinking about the viewers. They're always thinking about the audience. They are putting their viewers first and putting their athletes first. They look after their talent. They are just a tremendous outfit to work for. Broadcast now in 150 countries. Nielsen rated our show in Tokyo last year was 81 million. The fourth most watched sports organization online behind WWE, NFL, and NBA. So they're kicking major goals, and I'm loving every moment of it. So, again, so many things in my life have been serendipitous, but also have been because I've desired to do that. When you really desire something, the universe is going to find a way. God's going to find a way to open up the doors for you, okay? And it's so, I won't say open the doors. He's going to put the door there, and if you're prepared to knock on the door and then open it yourself and go through, that's when life happens for you. Okay, I won't say that the God or the universe is going to open the door for you. It's going to put the door there. Go, here's a doorway. Choose this doorway or this doorway. Knock on the door. You want to knock? You want to go through? Go through. It's there, but you got to got a desire to go through that door.
And One is one of the biggest promotions out there. What I've noticed, and I think Ramsey Dewey was talking about this, and that the UFC is more well known because they know how to promote their fighters a la WWE as characters. I'm not taking away anything from the talent of the fighter, the legitimacy of the fighter. They're all amazing. You make it to the UFC, Bellator, One, Brave, you're on top of the world. But the way I look at Brave, Bellator, and One specifically is that it is for the martial arts primarily. So if you are a martial arts competitor, if you are a martial artist, practitioner, this is there for the sport itself. The UFC has the peripheral stuff, the entertainment aspect of it that makes it bigger and brighter in some cases. Although, believe me, I love the UFC and I love One and whatever else you guys are doing out there.
I enjoy watching UFC as well. I'm a UFC fan. I love watching a lot of their athletes compete. There's guys I follow on there, guys that I know, that I've commentated, that I passionately follow. The ideology of One Championship is different. We aren't promoting fights. We are promoting athletic endeavors. We are promoting martial arts, the true Budo spirit of martial arts, honor, integrity, respect, the values of martial arts. It's not about, can this guy fight this guy and put a beating on him and make him bleed and knock him out or choke him out and be the BMF. It's not about that. And hey, that's the way UFC does their stuff. I enjoy it like everyone else. It's just that one's ideology is different. They're very focused on the martial arts aspect because it's developed by martial artists. They know what an athlete goes through. They know what a martial artist goes through his entire life. And so they stick true to those core values of the martial arts. And that's something I really love and appreciate about it as a commentator, as a guy who's been covering martial arts writing about martial arts since 1992. I appreciate the traditional aspects of the martial arts that are still well and alive in the MMA world through One Championship. It really is beautiful, and it makes for very family-friendly viewing. We're all about that. My instructions on One Championship is don't get too, as you'd say in America, too inside baseball. When you're commentating, I want the 10-year-old or the grandmother watching our matches to be able to understand what I'm talking about, what I'm saying, what I'm describing. I don't just want the student who's practicing BJJ and getting their purple belt to be able to understand a submission. I don't just want the experienced karateka or kickboxer or Muay Thai athlete to just understand the striking. It's got to appeal to a 10-year-old as much as it appeals to his grandmother when they're watching. It should encompass everybody and make it a viewing spectacle that everyone across all demographics can enjoy.
Well, you've been doing a great job at that, and I love what's going on over there. But I also love the fact that you guys mix it up. There's kickboxing shows, there's karate shows, there's Muay Thai, there's MMA, BJJ, everything that's involved in all aspects of martial arts, whether it's mixed or it's art specific and style specific. You guys are putting it on there, and it's amazing to sit there and in one show we'll have an MMA fight, and then 2 fights down on the card it'll be in the cage, but then they'll be wearing MMA gloves for a Thai boxing fight. So you guys are fresh and excited.
Man, for an all-round combat athlete, all-round combat sports fan like myself and so many people out there, it's a dream come true. I mean, remember the days of watching K1 to get our kickboxing fix and then watching Dream to get our mixed martial arts fix. Okay, now it's all in the one place. So you tune into a one championship show and you've got a mixed martial arts contest between amazing martial artists like an Ong Lan Sung or an Angela Lee or a Bibiano Fernandez or a Demetrius Johnson or an Eddie Alvarez. And then the very next match, you've got a kickboxing match between a Giorgio Petrosian or a Rekian Ursel or a Nikki Holtzkin, and then you've got a Muay Thai match between a Nong A or a Sam A or whoever it is. We've got all the best Muay Thai guys on the planet now with one super series. So this is the ultimate form of viewing if you are a fan of combat sports. And we've had boxing. Bangkok 2018, we had a WBC World Boxing Contest between Iran Diaz and Sissikhet Sorongvasai. Sissikhet pound for pound, one of the best in the world. I mean, crazy. On the same show, you had mixed martial arts, Muay Thai, and boxing, World Championship Boxing. It doesn't get any better than that. It's your home for everything that's combat. I mean, just that alone, that one is doing that is so groundbreaking.
Well, you can't steal the line of the old network, the home of mixed martial arts, because unfortunately Inside MMA is gone. But those were some fun times going up to that office in LA.
They were at the Staples Center. It was good times.
Yeah. I know we might be running a little bit low on time, so we're going to do some classic name association, and then we're going to do some current one competitors. And
done. Let's do it.
All right. We're gonna start off with the AXS TV guys. So Frank Trigg.
Handkerchief.
Okay.
I stole Frank's handkerchief many a time commentating during the MFC days, to the point that once I stole it off him, and you may remember at Sengoku, I think it was, he slapped me off my chair. So whenever I think of Frank Trigg, I think of handkerchief. And I also thank him for Michael Jai White. I did not know Michael Jai White existed before Frank Trigg one day told me, Schiavello, you've got to watch this movie called Black Dynamite. It is awesome. I watched it. I fell in love with Michael Jai White, and it started with Frank Trigg.
All right. Kenny Rice.
Horse racing. Kenny Rice may be known to a lot of people as a mixed martial arts commentator for HDNet over the years, but he is the preeminent horse race caller and expert in the USA. You want horse racing tips, go to Kenny Rice.
All right. We're going to go back to the very beginning of HDNet when it was there. Guy Metzger.
Oh, sexy. I mean, sex symbol, man. Number one sex symbol, Guy Metzger. The perfect looking and the perfect acting gentleman. I mean, if you had to take him out, if you were the creator and you had a lump of clay and you had to fashion the ideal man, looks-wise, personality-wise, physique-wise, everything, you'd fashion Guy Mezger.
And I hate Guy for one reason. It's because he's older than us and he still has a full head of hair.
Like I said, he's perfect. He's Guy Mezger.
You know, and he's got that salt and pepper hair, so he's a silver fox on top of it now at 52 years old. So, Guy, I love you as a fighter and as a human being, but I'm jealous as all hell. Bas Rutten.
Bas Rutten. Oh, geez. All right, you talk about word association, so it's the first thing that comes into my head. It's got to be motor mouth, and in a good way. If you are ever with Bas Rutten, if you're ever at a party, okay, you're ever at a party and you're worried about being in a social situation and you're thinking, this may be boring, I might get trapped with someone I don't want to get trapped to, go where Bas Rutten is. Stay glued to Bas Rutten. That guy will entertain you for hours on end with the most amazing stories and his booming laugh and his sense of humor. You want to be around Bas Rutten. You know in that episode of Seinfeld where Kramer says you want to be around the proctologist at a party because the proctologist has the best stories? Well, you want to be around Bas Rutten at a party because Bas has the best stories.
Bas has the absolute best stories. And I told Bas the last time that I talked to him, I said, Bas, I love you and I hate you. Because every time I went to the AXS TV studios, they'd give me free parking for 5 hours and I'd still have to pay $30 afterwards because it was just one more Bas Rutten story. Oh, just one more Bas Rutten story.
God bless him. He's awesome.
Oh, he's amazing, man. Your Freemason brother, Pat Miletich.
Tough, hard. That's what I think when I think of Pat. I think of like a brick wall, like a human tank. Pat's one of the toughest, to use another commonly used American phrase, one of the toughest sons of bitches I've ever met in my life. A gentleman, like you said, a brother of mine. I think the best mixed martial arts analyst in the game, but just tough. That's what I think about Pat. I love him so much, but just the friggin' epitome of male toughness.
All right. We're going to move on to Hollywood and professional wrestling. Stone Cold Steve Austin.
To coin an Australian phrase, top bloke. Let me tell you about Stone Cold. There's a whole chapter about Stone Cold in the book. Admittedly, Robert, I was never a Stone Cold fan. During the Stone Cold era, I was watching WCW. I was a Goldberg fan. I wasn't switching over onto WWE. Okay, I was Goldberg. I was NWO. I was, Diamond Dallas Page. I was there. I wasn't turning over for Undertaker or Stone Cold or Mankind or The Rock or those guys. What happened was, because I did the Voice versus Stone Cold Steve Austin, which is still regarded as the greatest interview with a professional wrestler ever done. And I'm not blowing my own trumpet, but if you haven't seen it, guys, watch it on YouTube. You'll agree 100%. I found out one day in 2011, 2012, I was flicking through Twitter and I saw that Stone Cold Steve Austin was following me. I didn't know Stone Cold. I had no idea he even knew who I was. I thought, oh, you know what? That'll make a great guest for the Voice Versus. So I reached out to him on Twitter and I contacted him. And he said, hey, yeah, I'd love to be on the show. And that's how it came for him to be on the show. It's just, I happened to see that he followed me one day on Twitter. Met him, we got on like a house on fire. We did this all-time great interview. We still chat today. I was still messaging him a couple of days ago. I love Stone Cold. He's just a top bloke, down to earth, no BS. We can learn a lot from him. He's very much like me. It's all about hard work and dedication, working hard, working your fingers to the bone and going for it. So I just think top bloke.
I love it, man. Hulk Hogan.
Legend and immortal. Those two words suit him. I love Hulk Hogan. Meeting him, people often ask me, have you ever been starstruck? You meet so many celebrities. Have you ever been starstruck? And I say very, 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 very few times I've been starstruck. One was Hulk Hogan. And I struggled to find 5 times in my life. 5 I've been starstruck. I struggled to find 3. One was definitely Hulk Hogan. We went to his house in Clearwater, Florida, for the Voice Versus, and this massive mansion that I talk about in the book. You can read about it. It's incredible. And we were outside out the front, and he rocks up in his pickup. And as he puts a tanned, bronzed arm out the window and he says hello, introduces himself as Terry, says brother, and he shake his hand. a bolt of lightning went through me. It was my childhood, Robert, come to life. As I said, I grew up a huge wrestling fan. WrestleMania 1 to 9 was my era. It was Gorilla Monsoon commentating those first 1 to 9. It was Hulk Hogan dominating. He was my childhood. So to meet him, to spend a day with him, to do this amazing interview with him, to get to spend time with the man, with the legend, is something I'll never forget. I'll forever be appreciative of. And he will always be the legend, the immortal in my eyes. Even though Ultimate Warrior, and you'll read in the book, if you're a wrestling fan, you can't miss the chapter about Hulk Hogan. You'll read how after the interview, we tried to get Ultimate Warrior on the show. There were a lot of problems, but Warrior went on this big Hogan bashing tirade. He set up a YouTube account to bash Hogan after my interview. It's all in the book. It's all chronicled in the book. God rest Warrior's soul. He passed away, but he made life quite hellacious for a while there, did Warrior. It's in the book. Even after Warrior tried to put the big kibosh on Hulk Hogan, I didn't buy it. It's why I refused Warrior on the show eventually. You know, there was too much messing around, and I knew he wanted to go after Hulk Hogan's jugular, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to put Hulk Hogan up there for you to tear apart, Warrior. It's not going to happen. Not on my time, not on my watch, not on my show. No, not going to happen. So, yeah, Hulk Hogan, immortal and legend.
I dig it. You know, and you bleached your mustache for him.
Yeah, that's funny, man. Again, that's in the
blind
book.
doing it.
I did. I was in my hotel room in Florida, and I got a bottle of bleach from the chemist, not knowing the tricks that Hogan would later reveal to me about how to bleach it properly, and I almost burnt my eyes out and burnt my face off doing it. Kids, do not try that at home unless you consult Hulk Hogan first.
All right. Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Love him. Love him. Jean-Claude Van Damme, I think, joyous smile. I first interviewed Jean-Claude. It's a great story in the book. I'm not going to spoil it. In like 1994. Okay. He was in Bangkok. We interviewed him. Very, very funny story. I later met him, partied with him, interviewed him again. Another very funny story in the book in 1999 when he came to Melbourne. I hadn't seen Jean-Claude for 21 years. And then in March of this year, when he came to do an Australian tour, a speaking tour, I was asked to host him here in Australia, doing a speaking engagement in Sydney, a speaking engagement in Melbourne in front of a live audience. We hung out. We got on like a house on fire. He'd become a fan of mine watching the K1 kickboxing over the years. I was still a huge fan of his. I love Jean-Claude. He's a great guy, full of great stories and always a big smile, very happy, very down to earth, tremendously successful. Had his son Nick out here with him as well. Love Jean-Claude. So whenever I think of him, I think smile. I think happiness. Jean-Claude is just joy.
You know, I'll tell you one quick Jean-Claude story. After we have to mention that you danced with Jean-Claude, a kickboxer.
I did. I got him to do the kickboxer dance in Melbourne and Sydney. I got the dance along. Another little dream come true. Whenever I have a celebrity and there's something that's iconic about them, when it was the Voice Versus, I tore, tank tops with Hulk Hogan. I smashed beers and drank 2 beers at once with Stone Cold Steve Austin. I had Michael Jai White throw a boomerang at me like he does in Black Dynamite. So when I was with Jean-Claude Van Damme, what's his most iconic moment in his movie history? It's the dance from the movie Kickboxer. I got him to do the dance on stage. He put his arm around me. He wanted me to dance with him. It was awesome. Well,
my experience with Jean-Claude when he was doing Jean-Claude Van Johnson, my Uncle George, my dad's Uncle George, who used to live in Melbourne actually, had passed away, I think 2 or 3 weeks prior to the interview. And the very first movie I saw with Uncle George was No Retreat, No Surrender. So Van Damme's first movie where he played a Russian kickboxer, that was a total badass. So I told him about that, and he leans into the camera and for my cousins in Australia, introduced himself as the character and gave
Ivan the Russian.
Yep.
Ivan the Russian. And still I will tell people to this day, No Retreat, No Surrender is the best on-screen martial arts performance you will see from Jean-Claude Van Damme. The reason being there are not a lot of cuts, not a lot of edits. You are seeing raw Van Damme using several styles of martial arts without cuts and pullaways. If you want to watch what Van Damme is really capable of, yeah, he does great stuff in Kickboxer, awesome helicopter kicks and the likes in Bloodsport, but watch No Retreat, No Surrender. Corny film. I still love it. Watch it every now and then, but just watch it for what Van Damme is capable of. And the great cameos in that film. You know, Pete Sugarfoot Cunningham in that film, one of the greatest kickboxers, true, real kickboxer world champions of all time. There are so many great appearances in there, but I love that film.
He wrote a foreword to the book, Michael Jai White.
Black Dynamite. I mean, I fell in love with that movie the first time I watched it. I sat down with a mate of mine called Javier, and we were at his house one night chilling out. I said, dude, have you heard this movie called, because Trigg told me about it. I said, dude, have you heard this movie called Black Dynamite? He's like, no. He goes, but funny you should say that. I've got it on my Xbox. I downloaded it or something a few months ago. I thought, oh, I'll watch it one day. I said, oh, cool, man, let's watch it. I think it's meant to be pretty good. We both watched it. We're both like, this is freaking amazing. Not only is it funny, the action scenes are insane. The writing is insane. It's just amazing. I was hooked on Michael Jai White. And then when I met Michael Jai, of course, for the first time shooting the Voice Versus at the Beverly Wilshire in 2012, whatever it was, we got on like a house on fire. Martial arts geeks, the both of us. I knew Black Dynamite word by word, off by heart. He met my wife, Irene, and he thought her name had come from me shouting Good Night Irene from the K1 days. You know, we became friends. He put me in his film, Never Back Down, No Surrender #3. I had a nice cameo in that film. Yeah, everything about Michael Jai is a gentleman. He wrote one of the forwards for the book, which I am eternally grateful for. And not only is he a badass martial artist, but a tremendous actor who does stuff outside of action. You know, if you've seen his drama on TBS, if you've seen some of his dramatic turns that he does, it's not all just about martial arts. He doesn't need to be kicking and punching or shooting. Michael Jai is a Broadway trained classic actor who's capable of doing that in a very appealing way. And I just love watching Michael's success.
Well, since we mentioned Bloodsport, and it's probably the second most entertaining interview that you've done on The Voice Versus, we have to go with Frank Dukes.
Mystique. That's the word for Frank Dukes. Frank Dukes is the Richard Gere's gerbils of the martial arts world. Okay? In that you don't know if it's true or not. I did what Frank has called his best interview ever. I allowed Frank to take his time and answer all his critics. I put all the questions to Frank that people really wanted to know. I have my own opinions on Frank. I've researched him, followed him, watched everything on him. My opinion is that there was a kumite, that was Hollywoodized for the movie. You've got to understand, guys, back in the 70s, martial arts in America, very raw. They were training on concrete floors in dojos located behind restaurants. A lot of it was secretive training, very closed. They would invite people from other dojos in to fight them. Pretty much no rules, no padding, no padding, no rules, anything goes. You don't believe me? Ask Hoist Gracie. There are videos on YouTube that Hoist Gracie has, the Gracie family, showing where guys have come to the Gracie dojo back in like the late 80s or whatever, challenging the Gracie brothers to fight in their dojo on a concrete floor that were filmed. Okay, you're not seeing the jumping, spinning helicopter 360-degree kicks that you see in Bloodsport. You're not seeing the dim mark through bricks. You're not seeing, Bolo Jung's Chong Li kill someone on an elevated stage. That's the Hollywood version. And people think that because they saw that, that's what a kumite should look like. So they think that Frank Dukes is full of BS when Frank Dukes says the kumite was real. But it was real. Kumites weren't a rare occurrence back then. They were happening a lot. Kumite still happen today. In 2007, I was one of the only Western journalists ever invited behind closed doors at the Honbu Dojo of Kyokushin in Ibisu, Tokyo, to witness a Henanku Kumite. It's a 100-man kumite. Arthur Hovasinian, an Armenian, was trying to complete this epic feat that had only ever been completed by, I think, 8 people. What the feat is, you need to fight 100 black belts, one after the other, continuously, with only a 30-second break between. You are wearing no padding but for a groin guard. It is bare knuckle. Now, when I say bare knuckle, I don't mean like in bare knuckle boxing where they tape their hands. I mean bare knuckle.
Wow.
Hovasinian weighed 75 kilos, I want to say. Opponent number 99 was 120 kilo K1 superstar Glaube Feitosa. Opponent number 100 was 105 kilogram K1 superstar Francisco Filio, after he'd fought 98 black belts previously who had tried to pulverize the man, pummel the man. That's a 100-man kumite. That's as real as it gets. I've seen it. So Frank Dukes is for real. Frank Dukes is tremendous. There are a lot of other stories Frank Dukes says. I will leave it to the viewer to determine whether they believe it or not. So Frank Dukes, for me, when you ask for a word association, Robert, has to be mystique. There is no more mysterious, mystical, mystique-filled character in martial arts than Frank Dukes.
I dig it. And Mr. Chapter 3 himself, Steven Seagal.
It's almost the same as Frank. It's intrigue. It's maybe not mystique, it's intrigue. Because you're listening to Steven tell you he's the reincarnation of a Tibetan Lama. You listen to Steven telling you he was friends with Bruce Lee. You listen to Steven telling you that, you know, he was a dishwasher in a kitchen who was so fast at washing dishes that a former boxing champion from Mexico saw how fast his hands were. And you're wondering, is it real? Is it legit? Is it true? Yeah, Seagal is a legit Aikido master. He's big, 6'5", maybe 120 kilos, you know, 220, 230, 240 pounds, big boy. You want to be around him. You want to be in his presence. He's got that magnetism to him. You're intrigued because once you get into his psyche, like I say in the book, it's like drilling into his psyche. You don't know if you're going to strike gold or if the drill bit's going to shatter into 1,000 pieces. And that's the beauty of Steven. Steven may not like me much anymore because he has this conspiracy that I put words in his mouth. Impossible, of course, but I got on like a house on fire with Steven. I like Steven. We got on so well. We have the same birthday, April 10. It's the intrigue of Steven.
I dig it. And we're going to leave you with these guys. We're going to do a couple of them. Since you work for one championship, we got to promote the promotion. And then, of course, we got to promote the book. Federico Roma.
Talent, man. I think talent is a really good word there. Talent. You just see someone that you know has a lot of natural talent. And, you know, sometimes, Robert, you've been covering this sport for a long time, and you can pick the wheat from the chaff, right? You can separate the cream from the stuff you throw out, all right? From the stuff you scrape off the bottom of the barrel. The cream rises to the top, so you know how to recognize talent. So that would be my association there is talent.
I dig it. Iman Barlow.
Beauty. Commentated Iman at Lion Fight, of course, a couple of times. She's coming to One Super Series. We have signed her. She's young. She's a multi-time world champion. She's beautiful to watch technique-wise in the ring, but she's a beautiful young lady. I mean, looks that could be in front of a Hollywood camera. Classical looks, you know, classical in the sense of an Audrey Hepburn. You know, you put her in a black and white film, she'd be a star. And a beautiful young lady to be around in her presence. Sweet-spoken, great sense of humor. Got to hang out with her in Vegas. Yeah, Iman Barlow, huge fan.
Well, I can't wait to see what she does at One. A name we're familiar with, fighting out of Italy now, Armin Petrosian.
Armin. Wow, that's an interesting one. Usually people ask about Georgia. You're asking about Armin?
I'm asking about Armin.
Tough as nails. You know, in the shadow of his brother a lot. His brother's the greatest kickboxer of all time. Imagine being the brother of Muhammad Ali. Imagine being the brother of Pelé or Maradona. I mean, how do you compete with that? But he's hanging well on his own. He's doing it on his own. You know, he's making a name for himself. I think of Armin, I think of tough as nails. I think what that family's been through and being Armenian refugees who were sleeping at a train station in Milan for a long time, whose father had to scratch and scrape to scrounge together money to put them in kickboxing classes because he saw some talent in them and their love of Bruce Lee films. And for Armin to pursue this, and doing it on his own merit, not just doing it because his brother says, hey, sign a contract for my brother or you don't sign me. It's never been like that. Armin has done it on his own merit. He's tough as nails.
That's why we have to give Armin credit, because he's almost never talked about.
Nope. Good for you, Robert.
Thank you. And a personal favorite of mine from one championship, Stamp Fairtex.
Oh, I get so many words I can associate with it. I don't want to make it sound wrong, but I'm going to say gorgeous. And I don't mean that looks wise. I mean, yeah, she's a gorgeous looking girl, but everything about Stamp is gorgeous. And I mean gorgeous in several definitions. The way she fights to me is gorgeous. It really is. Gorgeous is something you see as beautiful, that you like, that attracts you to something. Her fight style is attractive to me. I can watch it time and time again. The way she can lock on that Muay Thai clinch and drill the knees to the midsection. The way she catches a kicking leg and punches and punches and punches. That is gorgeous to watch. It's the aggression and the technique that you don't see from that many women in Muay Thai, but she does it time and time again. And the gorgeous way now she's adapted to mixed martial arts and that she finishes opponents. She's not finishing people in Muay Thai. She's finishing everyone in mixed martial arts except for B. Nguyen. She's finished 4 of 5 so far, pounding them out, submitting them, or knocking them out. And then the way that she's now starting to learn English. Matt Lucas is teaching her English in Pattaya by reading her Aesop's Fables. I found out a few weeks ago. That's how she's learning English. Now she's starting to do some of her media interviews for one in English. I mean, 2-sport world champion. The way she walks out to the ring, you know, the dancing, the glasses, the costumes, the music. She's vicious, but she maintains that girliness, that feminine quality. It's gorgeous.
Another thing that I really like about her is that if you were going to choreograph a movie Muay Thai fight scene, that's what her bouts look like.
100%. 100%. I could not argue with you on that one. Yep, 100%.
Well, my friend, Good Night Irene comes out this October. Give us the specific date where we can find, you know, when the book comes out and where we can find it.
Thanks, Robert. So once again, here's what it looks like, folks. Good Night Irene drops October 1st worldwide. For all you in America, go to barnesandnoble.com. It is on their website right now. You can pre-order it to make sure your copy hits you on October 1st. barnesandnoble.com in America. Worldwide, go to the One Shop, pre-order it there at onefc.com. And, you know, thanks for having me on, Robert. I really hope everyone enjoys the book. And once again, I know there's so much celebrity stuff in here. I mean, there's too many celebrities to mention that are in here. But really the social message that I hope that kids especially can look at this book, can read it and go, I can do it too. I can do what I want to do no matter what I look like, no matter what people are saying. I can do it too because that guy did it. I'm proof of it, Robert. I know that you're proof of it, Robert, or you wouldn't be here today. I want to see other people inspired by the book, that they too can turn around in a year, 10 years, 20 years, write me an email and say, hey, Schiavello, I'm proof of it too.
Well, after 8 years, I'm still lucky enough to call you my friend, and I'm thrilled that we get to talk. And thanks to technology, you're on the other side of the planet, and we got to pull it off today. So I'm thrilled with that. The book is fantastic. We mentioned quite a few names that are in the book, so that's why we had to tease them as well. Chapter 3 is still a favorite of mine. Michael, what's one thing you want to leave everybody with after you tell us where we can find you on social media?
At Schiavello Voice on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, it's all there. But the final thing I want to say is thank you, Robert. I mean, we've been friends now for 8 years, you and I, and we've always got tremendous joy out of staying in touch with each other and talking to each other on a professional and a very personal basis. And these are the types of friendships I like to build in our industry. They are rare, and when you have one, you treasure it. Thanks for having me on. And to everybody, make sure you tune in and make sure you log on to Fanboy Nation, because Robert's the man. He does a great job, and he's feeding us. He is feeding us all our fantasies and our childhood nostalgia and all of our, you know, things that we dream about through Fanboy Nation. And that's what I love about the website and about your interviews, mate. Is that you're feeding, you know, wrestling and Hollywood and Asian cinema and fight sports and everything that we came to love as kids. We can still love as adults, and we get our fix through you.
Well, I'm absolutely humbled by that. And remember, if one FC or one championship, I'm sorry, we got to correct that. It's a bad habit to still call it one FC, but one championship, if they ever need an American ring announcer, you know where to look.
You're on point, brother. Thank you, Robert. God bless you.
Thank you. And again, Good Night Irene, worldwide, October 1st. Can't wait for everybody to read it. It's a phenomenal book. Michael Schiavello, my friend, it is always a pleasure to chat with you.